It's time to gather together for Havdalah. I hate asking people to move, but I'm going to make you do it anyway. So why don't we stand up and let's try to come together in a big circle. You're not going to put your arm around me?
Well, I'm getting ready to hold the mic.
Okay. There we go. Oh, now we're in the mush pot. Judaism recognizes the need to make distinctions, that we separate between the weekday and Shabbat, just like we separate between work days and vacation times. Oh, no, don't want it to catch on fire. I'm not sure that's going to, I'm nervous about messing anything up.
We have a virtual circle.
Like I just did. Uh-oh.
I'll fix it.
Okay, that would be awesome. Okay. And it's those distinctions that enable us to enjoy each and every day, to see every part of our life as an important part of the experience of being alive. So as we do this Havdalah, the final Havdalah for this Jewish year, let's take a moment to just breathe in, breathe out. Take a little time to think about this year. Was it a hard one? Did it have some particular challenges for you this year? Are there things that you want to leave behind as we welcome in the new year next Shabbat? Were there blessings? Were there moments of joy that you want to hold into your heart forever? In your relationships, if there have been breaches or tears, have you taken the time yet to try to mend them and to repair those friendships or those relationships with your family? We have one more week before we say Shana Tova, one more week in this year, one more week to try to fix the wrongs that we've engaged in.
Please join us. Lie, lie, la, 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 lie, 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 la, 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 lie, lie, la, la, lie, 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 la, lie, lie, la, lie, yeah, lie, la, 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 lie, lie, yeah, la, 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 lie, lie, yeah, la, lie, 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 la, lie, lie, la, lie, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei morei ha'eno borei minei v'samim Amin. Whoops, lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Ya la lie, 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 lie. Ya la lie, lie, ya la lie. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei morei ha'esh. Borei morei ha'esh. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 ya la la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lechol hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, chatotenu imchol, zareinu v'chatzpeinu yarbe kachol, ve'akochavim balayla. Shavua tov, Shavua tov, Shavua tov, Shavua tov. Shavua tov, Shavua tov, Shavua tov, Shavua tov. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Giladi, Bimera ve'yameinu, Yavo Eleinu. Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. That was perfect timing.
It was perfect timing. So, Shavua Tov. I'm going to flip on the lights. Feel free to grab some drinks and food real quick, and then we're going to go hang out with Barbie for a little bit.
Oh, so don't worry about it. I'll be using this one. That one I was going to use if people talk to have
So I'm going to invite everybody to grab a seat and come have a seat. Fill up those plates. And if, for those of you already sitting, if you haven't already introduced yourself to the people who are at your table, take a moment to introduce yourselves, because these are going to be your study buddies for tonight, so you should at least know each other's names. So while we're waiting for the last few people to have a seat, I've learned as I get older, when you go quieter, it's much more effective than going louder, except for with my children, where nothing works. So it's true, nothing works. So I am assuming that anybody who is dressed in a variation of pink is here because of the topic tonight. But let me just get a quick show of hands. How many people saw the Barbie movie? Ooh, let me put this a different way. Who has not seen the Barbie movie? Okay, you'll still be able to follow just fine, so not a problem. So as many of you have probably found out in the last month, Barbie is very, very Jewish. Her roots, her story are very much rooted in, with a Jewish Los Angeles family. Where's Nita? Is Nita still working in the other room? Nita said that Barbie and Ken actually went to the same high school as several people in this room. If you went to Hamilton High in LA, raise your hand. They did not go at the same time as Barbie and Ken, because Barbie and Ken is a little older than all of them. But Barbie really is a Jewish story. And actually, there's another great Barbie movie. It's only 15 minutes. I recommend looking it up. And it's actually about Jewish identity as told through the lens of Barbie. It's a great movie. I show it to my confirmation class every year. But as I was watching the Barbie movie, I was really struck at many points throughout the film that there was a real Jewish sensibility to a lot of what I was watching. And it's not a huge surprise, because while Greta Gerwig is not Jewish, her co-writer, Noah Baumbach, is. And the two of them do live in kind of a Jewish environment. They do Shabbat dinner with their family. And I think that some of those ways of seeing the world worked itself into the movie. And so what I wanted to do tonight is look at some of the teachings or some of the quotes that we see throughout Barbie, some of the ones that really struck me. And we're going to see, does it correspond with Jewish teaching or not? And so when we have the Jewish teaching up, what I want to do is make sure that we take some time at our tables to talk about it. Is that what Barbie meant by those? Is that what Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig meant through the voice of Barbie when they were saying that in the movie? Does it fit? Does it not fit? And what do you think about it? So, as I believe it was said in a musical, let's start at the very beginning, because it's a very good place to start. Was it not in a musical? Do you want me to sing it? Let's start at the very beginning. Yeah, that's all I could do. And I just realized that is now being broadcast to the universe, and other people just heard me sing. So, in the beginning, if you look at the top slide, we see a clip from the movie. Who's on the right in that picture? No. On the left is Ruth Handler, because look she's the shorter one. She's the teeny one. Barbie is taller. So we see Barbie and her creator holding hands, which is very reminiscent of this masterpiece by Michelangelo. So let me ask you, Jewish or not Jewish? Very Jewish. Because just as God created humanity in the image of God, so did Ruth Handler create Barbie. Not in the physical image, but with limitless potential. Because as we read in the Torah, and God created Adam in God's own image, in the image of God created Adam, male and female, God created them. Now, I didn't translate the word Adam. I didn't say Adam, because Adam is a name. Adam means earthling. And in the Torah, Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam, it's ha'adam, the Adam, the earthling. And so we're taught in Genesis chapter 1:27 that when God, bless you, creates humanity, it is both male and female, and it is also in the image of God. So does that mean a literal depiction of God? Does it mean that there are men and there are women? Or does it leave room for interpretation that perhaps within all of us there is some mixture of different things? So I want you to let's take a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and talk about what that means to you when you look at this verse. How does that help you understand humanity? And what does it mean to be created in God's image? I should hear chaos. Talk amongst yourselves. Anything that anyone discussed at the table that they want to share? Did you learn or share anything with anybody that you want to share with the larger group? Yeah.
What does Eve mean?
So Eve is life. Eve is Chava, and she means life. And so we're not going to go into it tonight, but there are fabulous interpretations because we actually have not one but two different creation stories in the Torah. In chapter 1, we have this one where the male and the female are created at the same time. Eve doesn't get created until chapter 2. So there's some midrashim that this isn't Eve, but that this is Lilith. And Lilith had the audacity of seeing herself as Adam's equal, and and he didn't like it. And basically, she was told that unless you submit to him, then you have to you're going to get banished and you're going to become a she-demon. And she's like, cool, I'd rather be a she-demon than be subservient. And off she goes. And then in the second chapter, we see the creation of Eve. So I want you to also notice the picture on the right. One of the fun little things in the Barbie movie is all the women are Barbie, all the men are Ken, yet each one is different. And each one has its own special thing. Now, except for Alan. Alan has his own special thing. So in the Mishnah, they address this issue of humanity being created in the image of God, and yet, if you look out around the room, each one of us is unique and distinct. Peter, would you mind reading that for me?
But a single person was created to proclaim the greatness of the Holy Blessed One. For humans stamp many coins with one seal, and they are all like one another. But the King of Kings, the Holy Blessed One, has stamped every human with the seal of the first person, yet not one of them are like another. Therefore everyone must say, for my sake was the world created.
So take a little time and talk amongst yourselves. What does that mean to you? How does that change the way you think of this, or does it change the way you think of what it means that humanity is created in the image of God? Again, I want to hear chaos. help anyone see the verse that we're all created in the image of God differently? How did you interpret this verse? Not at all. Raise your hand if you liked this idea. Why? Any of you want to say what you liked about it?
Not to be simplistic, but I think it's almost inherent, extrapolating from the human being made in God's image, that the human is/are different, physically, mentally, emotionally, in every possible way. So I think it's almost a more elaborate statement of the same thing.
Right. It goes into more detail, in essence. How about anyone else? Did anyone just find it, it's trite, I don't really like it? Here, can you pass this down?
This is awkward. Well, going back to the first one where everyone is made in my image, then everyone, because we have transgender people, then God is obviously transgender. If God is made in the image, if everyone's made in that image, so that means that everybody has that within them.
Right. We all contain within us a world of possibilities.
Right. And the other thing we talked about is that in a social justice kind of way, everyone is equal and needs to be treated the same.
Right, and it's very easy for us to look at this sentence, this teaching in an outward way, to say, okay, everybody is created in the image of God. But I want you to sit with a second, the idea that means you are created in the image of God. How would you live your life differently? How would you treat yourself differently if you saw yourself as being a reflection of the holy in this world? Getting all my steps in.
Well, what immediately goes to my mind, there's a wonderful meditation that's called loving kindness, in which you basically imagine that you're getting loving kindness from a lot of people, and that you're giving it back. So that's what I think immediately comes to me, is the idea that you're worthy of being loved and taken care of and cherished. And particularly, I think, women and teenage girls, that's so different from what our culture teaches us. So the idea that you're a precious person and that you're entitled to loving kindness regardless of what part of your body doesn't fit the modern image is such a powerful thing, but I think we've really lost it in our modern culture.
Absolutely, and that actually reminds me of one of the fun little brief moments in the Barbie movie. What did the Barbies say when they got awarded like the Nobel Prize? Does anyone remember? They said, "Thank you, I deserved it. Thank you, I worked hard for this." And a lot of writers pointed that out because we don't tend to hear women saying that when they get rewards. It's like, oh, well, you know, my husband made it possible because he was doing this or my that. And you don't hear them saying, yeah, I really earned this. So, and I think that goes back to what you're saying about this sense of worthiness, of loving kindness. Where did I lose this? Okay. So, next teaching from Barbie. She says, I want to be a part of the people that make meaning, not the thing that's made. So, Jewish or not Jewish? Jewish. What is more Jewish than wanting to live a life of meaning? It's what we do. And the one who really, whoops, I want to make sure I'm on the right slide. So let's take a second. Who doesn't mind reading in public? Lisa, do you mind reading this out loud? So the first paragraph is from the Mishnah Torah by Maimonides. Let's hear him first.
The sages taught.
Yeah. Let's go from the top.
Okay. And Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, 3 stages of creation. And God said, let there be, and there was, and God saw that it was good. The sages taught Just as God is called gracious, so you be gracious. Just as he is called merciful, so you be merciful. Just as he is called holy, so you be holy. So too the prophets described the Almighty by all the various tributes: long-suffering, abounding in kindness, righteous, upright, perfect, mighty, and powerful, and so on, to teach us that these qualities are good and right, and that a human being should cultivate them, and thus imitate God as far as we can.
Okay, and now the next is by Rabbi Sachs.
Implicit in the first chapter of Genesis is thus a momentous challenge. Just as God is creative, so you be creative. In making humans, God endowed one creature, the only one thus far known to science, with the capacity not merely to adapt to its environment, but to adapt its environment to them, to shape the world, to be active, not merely passive, in relation to the influences and circumstances that surround them.
So let me give you a quick peek again at the Barbie quote, that she wants to be part of the people that make meaning, not the thing that is made. And then we have, the teaching by Maimonides and Rabbi Sachs. Does this fit the teaching? What are we being taught here? What is Rabbi Sachs telling us? What does it mean to make meaning? Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, so it sounds like this one made a lot of people think. Are there anything that you guys shared at your tables that you want to share with the larger group? Any ideas that came out of this discussion? Wow, crickets. Okay, Blair?
Well, we had just started talking about choice, about making choices, and the Barbie quote is about I want to be in the position where I'm making a choice, where it's not imposed upon me, where the role is not, I'm not defined by that role that somebody else gives me. If I choose to take on that role, it's a conscious decision, and that has to do with that's what I had. Or that's sort of where we were going.
No, but that's really the essence of what the high holidays are about. It's a reminder that part of being human is the capacity to make choices. Now we have the capacity to do it, whether or not we do it. Some of us passively go through life, and some of us actively think about what is it that we want to do. But the high holidays are kind of cold water in the face to remind you now's the time to start making some of those choices and some of those decisions. Anything else that anyone want to share? No? Okay. Let me find my little clicker. So this, Dr. Henry Slaminsky was a professor at the Jewish Institute of Religion. That means, so I graduated out of the campus of the Jewish Institute of Religion, but by that time it was known as the Hebrew Union College - Jewish Institute of Religion. So at the time that Dr. Slaminsky was teaching, this was kind of a non-denominational American quasi-progressive seminary. And so who have I not? Steve, would you mind reading? Dr. Slaminsky has to say.
Man has freedom. He can choose God or reject God. He can lead the world to perdition and to redemption. The creation of this being, man, with such power of freedom means that God has made room for a co-determining power alongside of himself. Man is the crossroad of the world.
So I want you to think of man as meaning human. I didn't want to change Dr. Slaminsky's words, but he's writing in the 30s, so he thinks that man is inclusive of all people. So just read it as humans have freedom. Humans can choose God or reject God. Talk about it. Do you agree with Dr. Slaminsky? Ignore his sexist language? Oh, where's the typo? Oh. Well, you know what? I was in the middle of writing high holiday sermons, so I perhaps may have been confusing perdition and redemption in that moment. So take a little time and see if you agree with him or not. There's a premise in Judaism that we are partners with God, but there's another concept that God gave us the world to do with it as we would. And so he's putting the responsibility on us. If we choose the path for peace, that is our choice. If we choose the path for war, that is our choice. And so basically he's saying, don't say God is in control. We are in control.
So we have to assume the responsibility.
Right. So I mean, think about it. How oftentimes, like in Christianity, it's like, it's in God's hands. We don't say that. but I think people are still chatting. So I think this one was a little bit harder for some people to wrestle with. First of all, who agrees with Dr. Sliminsky's premise here? Raise your hand if you agree. Okay, Jennifer, I'm going to call on you because you have a very funny look on your face. You're like, I'll agree with him. Why do you agree with him?
I agree with him because I think people can choose to create the world we want to create. And God has set out examples for us and has given us the power to do that. But I don't see God as being the one who controls what is going on in the world, that we make choices and our actions determine the kind of world we're going to live in.
Beautiful. And Elizabeth, you said something that I think is actually in our prayer book. I can't remember. I think it's with the tefillah. Do you want to share?
I was going to give you credit, Barbie Rabbi, or Rabbi Barbie. But yes, that we have to. We think. What is it now? Now I forgot. That we pray as if God. We pray as if it's up to God, but we have to act as if it's up to us. So we have to act. So we have to be partners, and we're the ones who can make a difference in the world.
Right. It's no surprise that Dr. Sliminsky was teaching at a seminary that became part of the Reform movement, because this is very much putting the power in our hands and not in God's hands. Ruth Handler. First of all, was she not adorable as a little Jewish bubby? Like, just the cutest. Humans only have one ending. Ideas live forever. Jewish or not Jewish? So Jewish. What is more Jewish than ideas or knowledge? Judaism was an idea that came into the world thousands of years ago, and it is still shining brightly. So, so Weird Barbie, I realized as I was putting this together, is the serpent. So I can't remember, it was a Christian, a female Christian minister who wrote a great article talking about how the Barbie movie is a retelling of the story of the Garden of Eden. And as I was putting these slides together, I realized, oh my gosh, Weird Barbie is the snake. But the snake is not necessarily bad, because what does the snake get humanity to do? Wait, free will? We eat from the tree of knowledge, which means we have free will, which if we had never done that, what would have happened to humanity? Adam and Eve would have lived in the Garden of Eden forever, and they would have been it. In order for humanity to happen, we have to get kicked out of the garden. Rabbi, I can't believe I'm blanking his first name, not Harold Kushner, the other Kushner. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner does this teaching where he says that Judaism says that this world wasn't the first world God created, we're just the last world that God is going to create. That we kept screwing up in previous worlds and God had to keep doing it, and that this is going to be the final world. And apparently in the other worlds, humanity was not doing what they were supposed to do. So God finally puts us in the middle of the Garden of Eden, and the two best looking trees in the garden is the garden of the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. And then we're still not eating of the fruit, and so God has to say, see that fruit that looks really, really good? Whatever you do, don't eat it. Now I'm going to step away out of the garden, and when I'm gone, don't eat the fruit. And we're still not eating the fruit because we're being good little boy and girl with Adam and Eve. And then God has to send in Sammy the snake, and the snake has to try to con Eve into eating the apple. Because if she doesn't eat the apple, none of us is going to come around. So, I was about to call you Barbie. Dorothy, can you read from Genesis chapter 3?
And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat of it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die.
So, do you remember in this point in the movie when Kate McKinnon is holding out the pretty pink pump and the Birkenstock? What is she telling Barbie that she has to choose from? She could have ignorance, ignorant bliss of being back in Barbie land, which is the Garden of Eden where everything is perfect. Or she could go for the Birkenstock and find out the truth about the real world. And what does Barbie want? Ignorance. She's totally going for the pump. Can't blame her. It's very cute. And who wouldn't like ignorance, because life would be so much easier. But Kate McKinnon, the snake, says, no, you gotta do this. You don't have a choice. And it's the same, oops, I went a little too far. And it's the same with us. Ideas are what makes humanity different. It's at the essence of who we are, being able to take ideas and make them into something. Blair.
Well, I was going to say the nuance with the Weird Barbie moment is that Weird Barbie is actually saying, because Barbie has already started to have doubts and concerns about what's going on in Barbie's life, and Weird Barbie says, do you want to find out what the problem is? Or do you want to do you want to go through the rest of your life uneasy?
Right, not knowing.
Yeah.
Right, and this is basically something that all of us have to go through. At some point, we have to go for the truth. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, so this is the next one. Is this Jewish or not Jewish? I'm going to assume from that laughter you think this is Jewish. It does deserve 2 stars, because what is more Jewish than thinking about death? It's what we do. And in fact, it's what we do this time of year. I think this is the prayer that I've never met a human being who's like, oh, that's my favorite prayer. I think it is one of the darkest, most depressing prayers we do. I have to say it's the least favorite one for me to say at the high holidays. It's very uncomfortable, and I try not to make eye contact with anybody when I'm reading this prayer. So let's look at a little teaching about the prayer, because I feel more comfortable with this. This is by Rabbi Aaron Pankin of blessed memory, who had been the head of the Hebrew Union College. Jennifer, can you handle reading that one?
Our actions help us live in such a way that when we suffer life's darkest depredations, we will always have ways of coping with them. Our actions may not change the ultimate outcome one iota, but they alter our attitude, bolster our ability to withstand challenges, help us handle unavoidable misfortunes better, and see life's value amid chaos and dismay.
So I want to throw this one out for us to discuss, because while we all laugh about the idea of us talking about death, the reason we talk about death in Judaism is to prompt us to be more engaged in life. So take a little time and look at what Rabbi Aaron Pankin has to say. What do you think about that? What do you think about that particularly? What does it mean to you and say to you this time of year, as we're about to go into the high holidays, where we have very troubling prayers? We have Yizkor service, which is a very hard and painful service. For some reason, I think for most of us sitting together in a room with others who have lost someone, it's almost harder to sit through a Yizkor service than it is to come and say Kaddish on a yurtzeit. So what is Rabbi Pankin telling us about how we should engage in this topic? Talk amongst yourselves. So let's talk about this one as a group. What were some of the things that you discussed at the tables? Was this one that helps you see the high holidays differently? To look at the idea of how we're supposed to approach life differently? Do you not like it? It's old, been there, done that, nothing? Any reactions? Blair, you've been the only one not afraid to talk. Oh, good, Lisa.
So my curiosity about this quote is the emphasis on actions, because it seems to me we often talk about how we can't change what happens to us, but we can change how we feel about it. We can change our attitudes about what happens. So I'm having a hard time figuring out what actions Rabbi Pankin is referring to here.
I could definitely share some of that. Keeping in mind this is part of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy, forgiveness, acceptance. I think we've all had painful experiences, whether it's been in relationships or something done that truly makes us grieve, but you can't necessarily change it, but you can change your attitude towards it. So when I look at that where it says our actions may not change the ultimate outcome one iota, but they alter our attitude, that's kind of where I went when I needed to forgive my grandmother for things. I still wanted to have a relationship with her. I knew that there was literally nothing I could say or do that would cause a woman in her 90s to ever change her outlook about anything, but I could change my outlook. And that's what enabled change to occur and something to shift. That when we wait for other people to change, change is not going to happen. And we only have control over how we perceive it, not how anyone else does. Any other thoughts or reactions on this one? Laura, of course you had to be sitting on exactly the opposite side of the room. No, that's okay.
Well, I think there's also an important, when you talk about Jews thinking about death, people think about death. And, you know, a lot's been written. Some sociologists had this phrase about the denial of death. I think there's actually a real link between understanding that that is just part of the cycle. I mean, hopefully we don't want it to happen in terrible ways, and we don't want it to be, you know, but we all want a nice death. But I think there's a real link between recognizing that it is simply part of the cycle. It is simply part of having a human existence, and kindness, that we are really in that boat together. And so I think it's not just that we can be kind, but that if we really understand this deeply, we more deeply want to be kind.
And I think because we think about death as much as we do, it does help bring about healing. It helps us see things in a different way. So for instance, the Mourner's Kaddish. The Mourner's Kaddish wasn't part of the regular service until the Middle Ages. That there was, primary Kaddish was the rabbi's Kaddish. A Kaddish was said for rabbis. But after the massacre in the Rhineland, the people demanded that there be a reaction, that they needed a way to grieve, and the Mourner's Kaddish became part of our daily liturgy. And I think because we don't run away from death and we're willing to sit with the pain, it does allow us to then move forward. And you're right, everybody thinks about death, but I think we are very thoughtful about how we approach the topic.
One of the things we discussed that I brought up a little bit was the passage up there is, things may not be good, there may be awful things which happen. There are ways people get through them sometimes. Things may be better, but there is no guarantee at the other end that everything will work out. And I haven't seen the movie, but Barbie was also always the, everything's going to work out, it's all going to be pink and wonderful, which is not the case. And
okay, so the movie is coming on to streaming services, I think, in a week, so you'll have a chance. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Oh, yeah. Wait, no one's going to be offended if I just take off the shoes, right? Okay.
if you go back to this prayer, which troubles all of us, it's not talking generally about death or about attitudes or actions that we can take. It's talking about singling out individual people to be subjected to all of this. So I appreciate that you shared us that second one, and it's very nice, but it doesn't really address this horrible prayer that says that it's going to be written and it's going to be sealed, and there's nothing we can do about it, I guess, except change our attitude. But what I find so troubling about this is it talks about individual people who are going to have all these horrible things happen.
So it doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you that these are punishments. So going back to that same grandmother, who actually imparted a lot of wisdom, I think, as well. She used to say to me, and this was in response to, so some of you know, some of you don't know, my parents were killed in a car accident. A man chose to try to not just kill himself, but kill as many people as he could with them. And they were in the car on their way home. It's like one of those tragic, horrible things that you could see on that list. And my grandmother's attitude was, it was simply their time. And she said, you don't know, no one knows when their time will be. We don't know. And she said, you could be sitting on your couch or you could be climbing a mountain. Wouldn't it be better to climb a mountain? And so what my mother took of all the horrible things that my grandmother took from it was, instead of living in fear of the horrible things that might happen, you should live every day fully. Because if it's going to be your last day, you shouldn't be around sitting, staring at your navel. You should be doing something worthwhile. So when I look at that, it reminds me of the fragility of life. And each year when I read the names in the Yizkor service, we read the names of everyone who died in the past year. And most of the time, we have no idea, from one year to the next, who's going to be on that list and why. And so to me, what that reminds me of, this is a really, I'm blanking on the right P word. It's not precarious, not pernicious. It's so freaking random, the world that we live in. And it's a reminder to us that no matter what we might think we're doing to protect ourselves, we can't really protect ourselves. But you should still be living. Because it's better, it would be more horrible to just sit in your room and do nothing. Well, but I mean, some of the stuff you can't avoid. We can't necessarily avoid war. We can't necessarily avoid drought. Well, we definitely can't avoid drought or earthquakes. So, I know people who've said, I've never lived in California because you have earthquakes. It's like, seriously? You're not going to live in California because there might be an earthquake in some part of the state at some time? So I think it's to try to give us perspective. That being said, I still hate that prayer. Oops, I went in the wrong direction. Yeah. Oh, here, pass that down. Pass it over.
There's a book by, I believe it's Stephen Levine, A Year to Live. And there are courses given on that book. And people who have taken those courses feel that it's made their lives much more meaningful in preparation for death, even though it may not be in a year.
There's a teaching in Judaism where a rabbi is speaking to his students, and the students ask, when should you repent? And the rabbi says, you should repent one day before you die. And they said, but Rabbi, when is that? And he goes, aha. You should always repent, or you should be living every day as though this may be the last day. So how are you talking to people? Are you putting off a phone call to somebody who you should be calling? Are you putting off a visit? Are you putting off something, so you could play on your phone? What are you putting off? And we shouldn't. Oops, there we go. Oh, I went too far. Okay, this was my absolute favorite scene in the movie. Where Weird Barbie says you could go back to your regular life or you could know the truth about the universe. The choice is yours. And of course she says the first one, the high heel. And then she says, you have to want to know. Do it again. Is that Jewish or not Jewish? Yes, it's Jewish. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. This is the essence of what the high holidays are about. There's a lot of things that we can't change, but there's a lot of things that we can. Anyone want to guess who wrote this? Yes, Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. Well done. She's at your table. So here is the real Ruth Handler with her daughter Barbie and little Barbie in her hand. How many people got teary-eyed when Rhea Perlman said, "We mothers stand still so our daughters can look back to see how far they've come"? Your daughter cried? I totally got teary-eyed. But I was also a little torn about this one, because I don't like the idea of the mothers stopping going forward when they're still alive. So what were some of your thoughts or reactions to that? So Eileen, interesting that your daughter cried but you did not. Is there a reason?
It moved me as well. I just didn't cry. Yeah, right. No, it's a poignant concept, and we have to look back at our mothers who did the same for us, and the hope is that our girls don't have to have the same kind of struggles that we've experienced, and they can wear any kind of shoes they want.
So this question is for the men. Would this sentence be as meaningful to you if it was saying fathers and sons? And would it be as true?
I'm going to say one last thing before we go singing.
Okay. Oops.
Okay, where's that? Thanks.
I think the way society works now, we don't expect the fathers to stand still. And we don't expect men to have that degree of self-effacement to stay, here, you go on. And I think there would be a distinct difference in that. The way society has been structured nowadays, it is expected that the mother would be subservient, would be passive, would be, I'm done. I've done enough laundry. I've done enough, that kind of stuff. So I think yes, it would read differently, and I don't think it would have the same resonance.
Were you apoplectic? Were you wanting to answer? Your husband has the accent. Oops, here, pass this.
I would just say that I would like to believe that my husband, who has 2 daughters, what he would say, I'm just speculating here, is that he would say about his son, I would hope that I could stand back and see how you had advanced against the patriarchy. Right? That we as men have come so far because we are more open-minded, progressive, all the things that I was raised not to be. Or that's what I hope my husband would say in talking to our son.
But is Glenn?
Oh, Glenn, yeah.
I'm interested to see what Glenn has to say about him and his sons. Just keep in mind, one is here. Okay.
There's nothing so terrifying as when a rabbi gives their spouse the microphone.
Yes, giving your child the microphone is worse.
That's true. No, I don't understand, honestly, why I would be doing a favor to a son or to a daughter by standing still. I want to be able to give them a sense of, as best I can do it, of positive aging. I want them to see me as trying to move forward, even if I'm not always effective, even if it means that I sometimes slip and fall, but I want to give them a sense that at every point in their life, they can pursue purpose and meaning and a sense that they're of value to others.
Okay, so I'm going to invite people, hold on one sec. I'm going to invite you to take a step backward when you look at this. And instead of looking at it as you and your parent, look at it as a metaphor for generations. Because she's saying, we mothers stand still. How many of you had mothers who might have gone to college, but the expectation wasn't that they would still keep working after they graduated from college? The expectation was that they would probably get married and have kids. How many of you had grandmothers where there was zero expectation that they would go to college? Wanted to and couldn't. How many of you are terrified that we are going backwards in terms of the laws, in terms of women's rights? So I actually think that this statement was not about personal relationships between mothers and daughters. When I heard that one, it hit me thinking of it as generational. Because when I look at what's happening today politically, I'm so scared and so horrified that we're no longer going forward. That for a long time I could say, gosh, when my mother's generation was going to college, they had to live in all-female dorms, and guys weren't allowed up, and there were all these rules of what the girls had to do that men didn't have to do, and my mother couldn't get a credit card on her own, and all the things that my mother's generation, when she had been a young married, were totally different for me when I was a young married, and that for her, my grandmother didn't even want to get married because she saw it as being owned, because her first marriage was so hard to get out of that she saw it as being owned by the husband. And so when I look at this, I think of it's more generational. That's just my interpretation. I have not emailed Greta and said, what do you mean by this? But I think that if we see it generationally, it shifts a little bit.
I think if we can let go of the language around standing still, I think a lot of us are stumbling over the standing still part. But if we can just think of it kind of conceptually, looking back to be able to say that our daughters have been able to live in a world where there's way more progress. So I think that like a lot of us are stumbling on the standing still part.
And whereas for women, it's about getting further in the world and being constrained, we have to acknowledge that men and boys have also been constrained in different ways, and, hopefully, and have been told, don't cry and don't show emotion. And so we need to realize that that's also really important for boys and men to have the ability to have the full range of emotions.
So, Michael, I know you have to go sing.
So I have a different perspective on this, from the perspective of a Generation Z white male who looks back at their father and their mother. What? I'm not Gen Z. I'm projecting onto Gen Z that they're No, I'm a baby boomer all the way. But my point is, from the perspective of younger 20, 25-year-old white males, they're looking back at their parents, particularly their fathers, and they're saying, I haven't come very far at all. I haven't come nearly as far as they were able to come. And somebody screwed me out of the opportunity that I was supposed to have because I'm a white man, I'm a white male. And I think there's a lot of this replacement theory. They look at women, to the extent women have moved into the workplace. They're looking at immigrants. They're looking at people of color who are doing the things that they used to have a right to do. And they're feeling like, I should have come further than I did.
So I'm going to say, as the mother of two Gen Zs that are definitely very white and very male, it depends on the kid, because I think there's a lot of things that Gen Z has done already that I'm like, man, why didn't we do that? saying no to crazy work schedules or harassment, and, certain types of harassment. And I think in a lot of ways, Gen Z has gone much further than we're willing to. That when we talk about that generation in the workplace, oftentimes we complain about, oh, well, they think they should be, should be able to do this or do that. And it's like, yeah, they should. They should have work-life balance. They should, they should maybe not have to dream about life in the suburbs, but maybe a life where they're a little bit more in tune with the environment and more into experiences than things. So I think it depends on how those children are raised. Well, they have good reason not to trust institutions.
Sorry, I had one last thing with respect to this. Because it just occurred to me, you can stand still, but you don't have to stop. You do have, every once in a while, you do have, because we've seen this happen, especially with a lot of social justice things. We have to stand still for just a moment, just to see how far we have come, and also to look ahead to see how far we have to go.
Which is taking it back to what we're doing right now. That's what the high holidays do. They tell us to stand still for a little bit to get that perspective. I did not expect this one to be that controversial. Okay, so going back, is that a Jewish or not a Jewish idea? I think it is. Because we talk about standing on the shoulders of those who come before us. That the door of a door, that we're supposed to be aware of, that we're benefiting from the generations above, and also what wouldn't a Jewish mother do for her child? It was the only little kitschy thing I could think of. But no, in seriousness, we think about standing on the shoulders of those who come before us. Now, take it away from the idea of looking at gender. We think of our immigrant past. We think about how far we've come since our families moved to the United States. Or Ruth Bader Ginsburg would say, what is the difference between a shopkeeper and a Supreme Court justice? One generation. So I think in a Jewish context, we're very aware that we have what we have now because other people had to work hard to get us where we're at. That this, that whatever we have didn't magically fall into our laps. We're benefiting from other people's journeys. Okay, so we're going to pass this up. These were just cute little Yiddish quotes about mothers. Actually, the one I really liked was, a mother must have a large apron to cover up her children's faults. And while this is a Yiddish saying, I know others have said it, God couldn't be everywhere, so God created mothers. So these were just fun little Yiddish. Oh, actually, this was the best one by Seth Rogen. For a Jewish mother, having a country wage war on your son is the worst. If Kim Jong-un only knew what he was doing to my mother. So I don't know if you remember, he did that movie, and I just thought that was hysterical. Not the movie, the quote. So Barbie said, the real world isn't what I thought it was. And her creator says, it never is. And isn't that marvelous? Jewish or not Jewish? Jewish. That's why we engage in Tikkun Olam. The world was created, it wasn't what God expected it to be, but it's that not knowing that also can make life amazing. And so here we have a teaching from Bereshit Rabbah. It's Midrash on the book of Genesis. Rabbi Shimon said, when the Holy One, blessed be God, came to create Adam, the ministering angels formed themselves into groups and parties, some of saying, let them be created, while others urged, let them not be created. As it is written, loving kindness and truth met, justice and peace kissed. And loving kindness said, let them be created because they will dispense acts of kindness. And truth said, let them not be created because they will be full of lies. And justice said, let them be created because they will perform acts of justice. And peace said, let them not be created because he, or Adam, is full of strife. So what did God do? God held truth and cast it to the ground, as it is written, and truth will be sent to the earth. And the ministering angels said before the Holy One, sovereign of the universe, why do you despise thy seal? Let truth, because Truth is the seal of God. Let truth arise from the earth. Hence it is written, let truth spring up from the earth. And all our rabbis say the following in the name of Rabbi Hanina, whereas Rabbi Pinchas and Rabbi Hilka say it in the name of Rabbi Shimon, meaning a lot of different guys said this. Me'od, very, is in so on the seventh day of creation, God says that it is tov me'od, it is very good, and it is in reference to Adam, as it is written, and God saw everything that God had made, and behold, it was very good, and behold, Adam was good. So what is this midrash teaching us about the creation of humanity? Good idea or bad idea?
Interesting idea.
What? No, it is interesting. What did you say? There's a debate, which tells you that the rabbis are probably looking around going, humanity is messed up. You know, there's some real, and how many of you listen to the news in the morning and go, humanity is messed up? There are some people who are amazingly wonderful, and there are things that are amazingly shocking. And so from the rabbinic point of view, it's like, why would God create humanity if humanity is going to be so messed up? So, Rabbi Huna, the elder of Sepphoris, said, while the ministering angels were arguing with each other and disputing with each other, the Holy One created the first human, and God said to them, why are you arguing? Adam has already been made. So one of the things we learn from this is God knew that there was going to be chaos. God knew that we were going to be unpredictable, that everything the angels were saying was true. And yet God just kind of walked away and made us anyway. So I'm going to say this knowing that my son is in the room. It's kind of like parenting. You think it's going to be one way. Is it ever the way we thought it's going to be? Never. And here, going back to Ruthie here. Oops. The real world isn't what I thought it was. Our jobs are never what we think they're going to be. Our marriages are never going to be what we think they're going to be. Our children are never going to be what we think they could be. And yet, oftentimes it's more marvelous than we imagined. That we limit ourselves sometimes when we are not open to the possibilities of what can be. Let's go to the next one. The most beautiful thing you can be is yourself. Jewish or not Jewish? Jewish. It's actually very Jewish. This is one of my favorite teachings. Sometimes he's called Reb Zusha, sometimes he's called Zusia. So Reb Zusha was on his deathbed. This is a real guy who lived in the 1700s, and his students found him in uncontrollable tears. They tried to comfort him by telling him that he was almost as wise as Moses and as kind as Abraham, so he was sure to be judged positively in heaven. And he replied, when I get to heaven, I will not be asked, why weren't you like Moses, or why weren't you like Abraham? They will ask, why weren't you like Zusha? Why didn't he fully live up to his own potential? We should see ourselves, the true self, as the most beautiful thing. Not try to be like somebody else, not to follow somebody else's pattern, but simply to be true to who we are. When we are praying the high holiday prayers, we are supposed to be looking inward and not outward. We say the sins and the we, so I'm not going, wow, Lisa, you did that? Wow, we're not all confessing in the I, so I'm like, ooh, at least I'm not like that, I shouldn't care what she does. Well, I care about you. We should be concerned with being authentic to us. And so this is actually, so as you're going through the high holiday prayers, don't be judging your life according to anyone else. Don't judge it according to what are your parents done, or what has this person done or that person done. Can you look yourself in the mirror and saying you're being the best version of who you are supposed to be? Okay. It's the best best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. Jewish or not Jewish? Not Jewish. Really, really not Jewish. And this is because we don't live in the garden. I cannot tell you how hard it was to find an Eve Barbie. This was really hard. We don't live in the Garden of Eden. We live in the real world. Life isn't supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be different every day. Every day should be fresh, and every day should be a blessing. In our regular prayer book, we read, "There is grace that every dawn renews, a loveliness making every morning fresh. We will endure, we will prevail, we, the children of hope, children of the one who crowns the heavens with stars, endows the earth with glory, and fills the mind with wonder." Every day is a blessing. Doesn't mean that every day is good. There's going to be a lot of bad days, but it doesn't mean it's not a blessing. Anyone know what's the first thing we're supposed to say? What's the first prayer we're supposed to say when we wake up? Moda ani. Thank God my soul has been returned to me. No matter how crummy the day is, no matter how hard your life is, every day is a blessing. Distinctions are part of what Judaism is about. We started the evening tonight with Havdalah, and it's because the Havdalah blessing distinguishes Shabbat from the rest of the days of the week, and is because we have and can recognize different life experiences that we can appreciate the gifts that life does present us with. If every day was perfect, every day wouldn't necessarily be good. Perfect becomes boring. It's kind of like when a kid wants to eat candy every day and a parent finally says, fine, eat as much candy as you want. It doesn't last that long. It's not as great when it's perfect all the time. So, Barbie. If you remember this, she has just met with the evil teenagers at the junior high. I don't know if everybody caught this, but do you remember the Bratz dolls? Those 4 teenage girls were the Bratz dolls. And if you look at a picture of them and then the Bratz dolls next to them, it is really disturbing. So she's having a breakdown. She thinks I'm a fascist. I don't control the railways or the flow of commerce. Jewish or not Jewish? Jewish. Crazy conspiracy theories about Jews controlling commerce and industry is a very Jewish experience. Who has not been upset about somebody accusing us of being a fascist or controlling things? So I just thought that one was funny. So, is Ken Jewish? Okay, so Ryan Gosling has kind of embodied Ken. There are tons of YouTube videos of him talking as Ken, kind of explaining Ken's world. So this answer is not in the movie. This is Ryan Gosling being Ken in a YouTube video. So let's see what he has to say. Books are important, but I just have book. But if you have more than one, you have books, preferably ones about horses. What can I say? Books make people think that you have interests, and Ken's #1 personality trait is just to look interested in things. So Jewish or not Jewish? I have to disagree. He's a people of the book. There are horses in the Torah. Okay. So I just thought that was funny. So I hope that you guys have a year filled with Kenergy and with meaning. So we have some time before we go next door. So I have some bonus videos, which I'm going to totally need your help. So I went outside of the world of Barbie in the movie and went back to Toy Story, which had some great Barbie and Ken shorts. And I figured most of our talk has been about Barbie. Ken needed a little bit of time. Just a little. Oh, do you need this? Okay. Oh, here, I'll stand there. You don't have to stand.
it's going to work. Will, should we try that one?
Visiting the injection molded mansion of one of the coolest cultural icons of the past 5 decades. Let's see if he's home.
Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. Welcome to Ken's Dream House.
What's a typical day like for Ken?
Oh, please, listen, and I mean this sincerely. I'm just like any other toy. I still put my pants on one leg at a time. Groovy, huh? Ken has good genes that happen to look great in jeans.
What advice would you give a toy who's serious about becoming a Ken?
Well, if you're really serious, don't be! You're a Ken doll, and being Ken is about having fun.
So it must be difficult to be a guy who's a girl's toy.
That's so... Somebody said that?
Well, it's well known that most Ken owners are girls.
Okay, look, I'm a guy's toy, okay? I'm kind of a role model. A manly role model.
So it doesn't bother you that on your own box, your name is 8 times smaller than Barbie's?
Next question.
How do you respond to people who say you're really nothing more than a glorified Barbie accessory?
Okay, that's it. All right, this interview's over. It's totally uncool, man.
So,
So was there anything about any wisdom from the Barbie movie that you wanted to talk about tonight that I did not bring out or present? Oh, the monologue. Yes. Are you guys familiar with the monologue? So, okay, so the monologue was amazing. I didn't put it in there because I was trying to think of things that spoke about kind of the high holidays and Slichot, but I do think that it's worth bringing up and looking at. So hold on one sec. So I know not everybody has seen the movie, or you might have seen it a while ago, so let me pull up the monologue. And was there anything particular about the monologue you wanted us to talk about? Okay. Just, I don't want to miss anything. Okay. So here's the monologue. And I want men to also listen to this, because some of it you may identify with, or you may be looking at the world a little bit differently. So I want to hear from all different perspectives. It is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart. Oh, here's just, she's talking about to Barbie. Let me skip that part. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll that's just representing women, then I don't even know. How many people identified with her speech? What's the answer to it? Is that going to be the next generation's fate as well? Because I'd say that that's probably not something that's unique to those of us who are alive now. I think that that goes back and back and back of how women are supposed to behave. So how do we stop it?
I'm not actually sure we're gonna stop it, but I think it morphs. If you were to outline the monologue, you could see how some of those things have changed over time for women, and also, I mean, depending on lots of different things. So I'm more interested in, unfortunately, what are the things that are going to get added or changed, rather than how do we stop it? Because I'm not sure we can.
So I'm a little more optimistic than you, but I will wait till after you.
Well, one of the things we talked about is being defined by other people. Do we have to be thin for other people? Do we have to do this for other people? Do we have to, be the person that, and I think one of the messages that we were talking about today is to love thyself and to be the best person you can be for yourself. Nice. And that's how you deal with that.
So this reminds me of actually going to the movie for the first time with my girlfriends, and I think we were all, I remember this monologue vividly, but I also remember seeing all these different types of Barbies, and me and all of my friends getting really excited seeing ourselves in these different characters and seeing, these super empowered versions of women, right? Just being themselves. And I remember we left the theater just looking at each other the whole day going, "Hi Barbie, hey Barbie," right? And even to strangers in the theater and just people in our, and it reminds me of the verses about seeing ourselves as made in God's image in all of our variety. And I thought, if we could keep that energy going, between us women, but also just amongst everyone, to say, hey Barbie, you got this. Hey Ken, if we own that for ourselves, but also support our friends and see our, the people in our community and say, like, you can do these things. You can be sad and also happy and have a career and also be a mom. And if we start talking to each other like how these Barbies are talking to each other in the movie, then maybe we don't have to deal with that monologue.
I think for those of us who have sons, one of the things is to raise our sons to, in my case, I guess, respect their fathers, their grandfathers, and so on, but not be like them, and have respect, like more respect for women and women rights, and respect their sisters and their grandmothers and their bubbies and their moms, and put them not behind them on the side of, or not in front of them or behind them, but on the side of them, and have that same respect for them. And maybe that will make a difference if we have more men who are allies.
Why don't all the women lock arms and say no? And just everybody say no. We've been raised, my generation were raised to see other women as competition or the enemy, and it was always about getting men. So what if we all, and then the men will join us maybe, but why don't we all just say no? Everybody, nobody can't say no, and see how that works, like work together. Everyone's going, oh, this resonates with me, yeah. Well, okay, do it.
Eileen, I think, that's voice over here.
Well, I see hope because now that there's so many more women in professions in academia and medicine and in business, that they form support groups. My daughter, when she was writing her dissertation, had 4 friends, and they'd sit together and write, and they'd exchange ideas, and now that she's finished, she has those groups of friends, and they really provide something that I didn't have when I was going through that process.
So I'm going to say why I'm optimistic. I've been teaching
high school kids for well over 25 years, probably about 30, 35 years. I've been working with teens. And I think it's not about us bonding together as women, but all of us bonding together as humanity, as humans, to break down some of the some of the specific gender roles that we have and gender expectations or gender identities. And when I look at the high school kids today, I am so grateful that they don't see things the way that we see things. So I'm not sure how many years it's been now, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, there was a call from Camp Newman to all the regional rabbis and youth educators, and they were telling us that they were going to put together a new cabin, or not a new cabin, that there was a young woman who was in high school, and she was a trans girl, and they were going to put her in a cabin with all the other girls. When she had started as a camper, she had been in the boy cabins, and then as she got older, camp was one of those places where she could be herself. And they called everybody in advance because they were expecting there to be a huge backlash and that we would be upset. And everybody just said, okay. And then we waited to see what the kids were going to do. And they did nothing because it didn't matter to them. And that's like the thing that amazes me, is looking at the way that kids respond today versus, especially versus when I was in high school. Thank God they're not the same. At one point it used to be, we have kids in the congregation who I taught in confirmation who I was so sad never came out as gay when they were here, because they didn't feel safe and they were afraid and they thought that people would be mean to them. And then several years ago, I'm teaching a confirmation class, and during the course of the discussion, I realized there's 2 boys in the class who have, one who had 2 moms, one who had 2 dads, and 2 other kids came out like during the course of the conversation. And I'm like, did anyone notice that? You know, in like my head, I'm looking, and no one cared. And so I think what's key is going back to that idea that we see every single person created in the image of God. It doesn't matter what gender they are, doesn't matter what sexuality, doesn't matter what color. If everybody is truly being treated like whatever body shape they have, however they present themselves in the world, that's good, then we're going to go further. And I do hope, and I do believe that the younger generation is better. I've seen your son. You raised a human who just loves people, who's kind and caring. You know, that's part of my hope for the future. I felt like my contribution to feminism was going to be to raise 2 boys who treated everybody with kindness and compassion. And looking around and looking at, I know a lot of your kids. That's the best, that's how we change the future. We change it in our own homes. We change it on how we raise our children to see themselves. And if our children love themselves, then it's going to be easier for them to not be assholes to other people. And I think it starts with us. It starts with ourselves. So on that beautiful word, and I just realized I'm still on YouTube. Isn't that awesome? Okay. I have a contract, so that's a good thing. So in a few minutes, in 15 minutes, we're going to be starting services next door. Feel free to eat a little more, drink a little bit more. If you could help us out, if you have dirty dishes and stuff, the recycling and trash containers are all over there. Thank you. Oh, wait, quick announcement. I'm so sorry.
Quick announcement about this evening. There's a special prayer book for Slichot, and it's located in a box on the greeting table in the lobby. So grab there are not enough books for everyone, but there is loose leaf copies as well. So you pick those up. And one last thing, for all of those who have reading parts for tonight, please sit close to the aisles and try to be down to the bima when it's your turn to read, so we can get out of here before midnight.